Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about some of the paradoxes of morality. I'll give 3 examples of some inherent contradictions within moral thinking itself. So the first is this idea that in order to be moral by your own standards, you must be immoral to varying degrees by everyone else's standards. Because in so much as one is an individual, capable of his or her own thoughts and attitudes and thinking, they are subjective. And inasmuch as they are subjective, their morality, to be verified, must itself be subjective. And so there will obviously be discrepancies and differences within moral thinking from one person to the other. And the contradiction here, and the sort of the irony, is that in order to envision a universal morality of any kind, one must justify the power play that is necessary for moral thinking to take place. I'll go into more detail in other videos how the concept of justice actually comes from a relative equality between master and slave, or a relative power play between them. But in order to envision any sort of universal morality, we must envision the power of one having power over others, having sway over their thoughts and beliefs. It becomes reward and punishment. It becomes a sense of duty and honor to serve a certain person, a certain group, a certain establishment. And wheresoever there is a universal morality, due to the subjectivity of the individual inherently, this morality is always the product of a conquest of a kind of will to power, burgeoning and flourishing over the weaker wills. And the prevailing morality in this regard is always the morality of the rulers, of whatever ruling establishment there is. Just to go into more detail there, the second example I'll give of a paradox of morality is this idea that it is always the most moral people who are capable of the most immoral acts. Now, people often give examples of tyrants from history and whatnot, but I say you could give the example of any human being you've ever met, because it takes conviction to do something immoral, and morality provides one with a sense of conviction and this belief in the greater good, more powerful than their will would allow otherwise. Because one can follow morality without this morality really exalting their sense of personal pride and affirming themselves by simply submitting to a moral order of a kind. In a sense, one can renounce his own will in order to be a moral person. I'll make another video on that in the future sometime. And so, a generally weak-willed person is capable of doing some things they would not have been able to do previously through the means of morality itself, and this idea of the greater good. And we see this a lot in history, of course. We see people who are seemingly ordinary, normal people who are capable of doing things which the people tend to perceive as immoral. But if you look into the reasons why they did this, the reasons why they acted the way they did it for a sense of goodness. They were doing it for a sense of morality, essentially. I'm not just talking about utility or a belief in some sort of factual necessity or some sort of duty, but I'm also talking about a sense of virtue, that they are doing the greater good, essentially. And the third paradox I'll give is the most important one in my opinion. And this is the idea that, and it is a fact, of course, that in order to distinguish oneself morally, in order for the moral man to distinguish himself, he does so using morality itself. But he can only distinguish himself from the herd morally by engaging in mores and morals of the herd itself, and doing things which the herd itself must be capable of doing. So he never tries to enact greatness beyond the capabilities of the flock. He instead follows the suit of the flock to the best of his ability in an attempt of in an attempt to distinguish himself from other people. He tries to be the most sympathetic, he tries to be the most altruistic, he tries to be the most honest, and he tries to reciprocate as much as possible, to solicitate, and these other virtues of the common people. But the very fact that these virtues exist is proof that the flock, the herd, is capable of all of these things. If this man were to do something that ordinary people were not capable of, he would not be able to distinguish himself morally. He may distinguish himself as a great man, as a powerful man, a man who did wonderful or awesome things, good or bad, but he will not be able to be the most moral person. And so there's this paradoxical desire among the moral people to break free from the flock by being as good a member of the flock as possible. That's, I think, the greatest paradox of morality. But I just wanted to talk about those three different paradoxes. Just a short video, and I'll go into more detail later about different trains of thought relating to the last few videos that I've made regarding morality and justice and other topics.